What is going on, guys? It's Tony K with Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always and hoping that you are having a wonderful day. It is December 10th, I'm on my lunch break, and I wanted to, I wanted to talk about James Harden a little bit, talk about the NBA. You know, sometimes we are left with few options in life on what we can do in response to a situation. And I think James Harden is a perfect example of how, if you're willing to deal with some of the short term, the long term may pay off. So to catch everybody up, James Harden is the wildly offensively talented, and I'm only going to say offensively talented because I don't think he's a defensively talented player, but he's one of the best offensive players we will ever see. Although his style, depending upon what you think of it, that could impact your opinion. He plays for the Houston Rockets, and, the past few months for the Houston Rockets have been a bit of a dumpster fire. Welcome to 2020. They traded for Russell Westbrook after the Chris Paul experiment didn't work. Russell Westbrook didn't work, so they traded him to the Wizards for a John Wall and first-round pick, I believe, package that John Wall hasn't played in 2 years. So even if he's, 80%, 70% of what he was, do he and James Harden really make sense together in Houston? I don't believe so, but that's just me. So James Harden has made it very clear that he wants out. And there's a lot of stories circulating about Houston's owner and his cash flow problems, the culture. Normally when you have one of these big sports-related breakups, these kinds of things happen. There's the ugly stuff gets out. Winning cures and covers all. Winning is the rug that you can sweep all of your troubles under on a hardwood floor. So today, Shams Charania, I think it's how I say his name, I have no idea. He came out with the teams that James Harden wants to play for, and I thought this list was peculiarly, interestingly awesome. I don't even know if I said the words there correctly. But let's take a look at the teams that he is interested in playing for. He already had the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets on his list. The Nets, that would be must-watch drama, but I don't think it would be must-watch basketball. I really don't. The 76ers, I don't know what they would give up that would make sense in that trade. Like, they have DeMarcus Cousins in Houston, so Joel Embiid's out. You have John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins in Houston, so Ben Simmons is probably out because you need a shooter. You need someone who can score from the outside. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. And then what else can they send back for James Harden? I don't know. I'm sure there's a package there. But the two new teams that were added were the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat. So a few things to point out. One, do you notice the past few years that the East is starting to gather some players? Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, Giannis, and potentially James Harden. You have Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. Like, you have some real players. Jason Tatum. The East is getting a little bit of talent back, finally. Maybe a little more balanced. The other thing I find interesting is that the two teams that were recently added, the Heat and the Bucks, are both teams that, in theory, need one more piece to get over the next hump, right? For the Bucks, they have a huge issue. We're 11 days away from the cutoff for the Supermax for Giannis. He hasn't signed it. They mortgaged their future on Drew Holiday and a few other upgrades around Giannis, but nothing life-changing. I don't know if he's staying in Milwaukee right now with the way that team's constructed. It would make a lot of sense for them to make that move, because even if they lose Giannis next season at the end of the year, or at the end of this season, they'll still have James Harden. So it makes some sense. For the Heat, they were just in the finals, and I don't know if James Harden is willing to change what he can do and what he is able to do and change to be part of the Heat culture. That would be fun with him and Jimmy Butler, Bam, Dragic, Tyler Hero, and there's a lot of dudes out there. There's a lot of dudes out there they could make a trade, and it would possibly work. So I credit James Harden because I do think that he's in a tough spot where he knows he can't win with the style of play that he's asked to do. He's given it a few good years in Houston. It just hasn't worked out. It really hasn't. So if he's willing to make the changes that are going to be needed to succeed elsewhere, I'm all for this. All for this. I think New Jersey would be a debacle. Philadelphia would be too tough to make work pieces-wise for both teams. Miami feels like the best outcome possible because I think that would put Miami squarely in the title conversation along with Boston in the East. But I think it would do the same thing for Milwaukee. Whichever one of those two teams could land him, I think would automatically have to be considered the favorite in the East. Depending upon what they give up, of course, but I don't see either one of those teams giving up so much that they couldn't compete moving forward. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that James Harden isn't showing up to practice. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that he's breaking some of the NBA protocols on COVID. But I understand why he's doing it. It's his only play. He's got 3 years left on his contract, which this is a new thing as well. We're seeing this for the first time. 3 years left on the contract and wanting out. Not 2 years, not a year. 3 years. That's a huge amount of time for an NBA player. 3 years. That's a big deal. And he's making a lot of money over that time, too. So it's not going to be an easy move regardless. Now, if he's truly trying to get out of Houston because of the owner's cash flow problems and the culture and some of those other things, and because he just doesn't think he can do it there, okay, I understand that. Maybe not take such a crippling contract. Like these NBA players kill me with this, I want to play for a winner, but I'm not going to take less money to do so. Like LeBron James did it a few years ago with Miami. I remember that. And it paid off. These other guys like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, even Gordon Hayward to a much lesser extent, but with Charlotte, like they take this super max or the most money they can get because, yes, I understand cashing on a commodity that you have, but you can't bitch at that point. You can't bitch. If you're taking up 25% or 50%, whatever percentage you're taking up of your team's cap space, that's on you. That's not on the team. Like, that's on you as well. They offer it because they need – this is a star-driven league, so they need those players. If a few stars are willing to take a pay cut, like even the Warriors did a few years ago to keep some of their players, then yeah, you can make something special. My prediction over the next few years is the Eastern Conference will get more top-tier level players because the West is too deep, it's too talented, and it's too hard to come out of the Western Conference right now in the playoffs. So that's my prediction there. I think James Harden ends up with Milwaukee or with Miami over anything else. Those are the two teams, like even over Houston, even over Brooklyn or Philadelphia. I think those are the two teams that have the inside track to start the season with James Harden, or at least, get him on the roster. I just don't see Houston getting him to play. I think he's made it clear enough he wants out. And good for him. Like I said, the player empowerment is great. Cash in on the commodity, but then you have to understand if you're going to take, $50 million a year, whatever his contract is, that takes money away from other resources. And that's exactly what's happening with some of these teams. Look at Brooklyn. They're going to have a very good roster around Kyrie and Kevin, but at some point the bills are going to come in and they're not going to be able to pay all these guys. Like, that stuff adds up. Golden State lost their players along the way because of injury, and there's always contract issues. NFL has it too. Like, if you have a salary cap, these things come into play. And that's why it's so interesting when I see these superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis taking the max deal to stay in LA. Okay, those are two of the top 5 players in the world. I'm not upset about that. But I don't know that James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving are all in that category. James Harden may be in like 6 through 10, right? I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I think the Eastern Conference is going to get a lot stronger. If I had to pick a team, I'd say Miami would be the better fit for James Harden because I think that the culture, the history, and the and the base of what they have that he'd be walking into would be so astronomically strong that it would either be full-on success or full-on failure. I don't think there'd be an in-between with Miami. Milwaukee, I don't know if Giannis wants to play with James Harden. Like that, those guys have kind of chipped back and forth a bit. And it might have been in good fun, but they've chipped back and forth. I don't know if Giannis likes James Harden. And if I have Giannis, do I really need James Harden? Like, is James Harden ready to be a number 2 behind Giannis? He would likely be the number 1 on Miami. Possibly. I mean, it would be Jimmy's team, but he'd be the number 1 option. So, I don't know. It's good times. Let me know what you guys think. If you were in James Harden's spot, getting paid $40, $50 million a year to play basketball because of the talent that you have, would you do the same thing with 3 years left on your contract, knowing that you're playing for an owner that has cash problems, that has gambling issues, that has is cash poor, knowing that you're playing for a team that's trending in the wrong direction, knowing that you're playing for a team that's in the tougher of the 2 conferences, knowing that you're playing for a team that they want you to play a style that, while statistically speaking, it does help your career in terms of where you rank in the all-times for stats, but it doesn't help James Harden win. He hasn't made it to the finals since he left Oklahoma City, and he was the 6th man on that team. Thank you guys so much. Do me a favor, share this content. Get it out there. I want to see what people have to say about James Harden. This is going to be one of the most interesting free agent situation, or not free agent, but player situations in terms of trying to leave that we've seen in a while. Like Kevin Durant wasn't all that saucy. Kyrie Irving, I think he's a bit of a chode. So I have nothing positive to say about him. Russell Westbrook wanted out, but he didn't act the same way that James Harden did. I mean, this is going to be very interesting to see what he does. And with 3 years left on that contract, I'm ready. I'm ready to see how this plays out. Somebody is going to get an elite offensive talent in James Harden. If they can avoid giving up a huge haul, and they can make sure that they have good pieces around him with whatever structure they have in place, if he's willing to be that number 2, a lot of ifs there, but all those things happen, this could be something special. And I really believe that Miami's the team that should try and go after him. If they can avoid giving up some of their best pieces and maybe give up some draft picks, Houston needs to be very realistic in the fact that they're trending downward. They're not going to be competitive this year. John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins are coming back from years of riddled with injuries. This is going to be a rebuild time for the Houston Rockets. They need to be okay with that. They really do. Go and get some picks. Start the rebuild. The sooner you start the rebuild, the better. That's my opinion on this. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you next time. This is Tony K with Urban Girl Scout Media.